All right. Now think about the difference in your feelings compared to what you just heard. Y'all can be seated now. I'm through messing with you. Not well, I'm never through messing with you, but think about the difference in those two conversations you just had. And then think about if either one of them could have gone deeper, if you could have heard really more details about what's bothering that person. Because we acquire baggage from people when we hear their problems. Words. Words can cause us to struggle. Words can cause us to be excited for other people. Words are powerful. This morning, I want us to use some words in prayer because I just know this week has been a week of a lot of hurt for people. There's some folks hurting. Some folks have lost. Jose's lost his mom this week. There's some folks their mothers are close to death. There's some folks with some really heavy family stuff. And I just want us to stop and voice some words to God because our words communicate with God. And so let's just stop and pray and talk to God a little bit. And I'm going to give you just a moment of silence. You share what's going on with you, and then I'll pray out loud for us. God, in your incredible wisdom, you chose to create us to communicate with words. You could have done it in so many different ways, but you chose this way. Lord, you communicated with us through tremendous words called your Scripture. And it really is your voice calling out to us. It's words. And so, God, I thank you that we can use words to communicate back to you. And Lord, I pray for Jose and Johnny and Kathy and my friend James and others that I know just got hurting stuff going on. God, just help them. Heal the hurt. Guide them through the path. Give them strength. Give them courage. God, thank you that you hear our words. God, help us to use our words wisely. Amen. So words is this powerful tool that God has given us. We get to choose which way we're going to use them. Words of peace, words of joy, words of excitement, words of building up, or words that tear down, words of wrath. Words of wrath always have an aftermath. Words of anger, words that tear apart, always have a negative result. It hurts me to hear words of wrath. It hurts me to hear them voiced by other people. It hurts me to hear a husband tear down his spouse, his wife. Husbands, they're not your old lady. A little more respect. And wives, it hurts me to hear you tear down your husband. He's not another child you're having to raise. And then there's the kids. The kids seem to get the worst of it. It really hurts when you hear a mom or dad or some other adult figure who just cuts loose screaming and hollering at a child. And it usually begins in a scenario, and this is really what hurts me, when I hear the child trying to get the parents' attention and they don't listen. Mama, 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 daddy, daddy. And they're totally ignored to the point that mom and dad just explode in a mess of raging words that hurt. Not only do they hurt the child, they hurt those who hear it, and they hurt the one who's using it. Because words of wrath always have an aftermath. They have a result. They have a damaging effect. Now, some of you know that so much more than I do. You grew up in a home of words, abusive words. You grew up in a home where you feared words. You grew up in a home where you were belittled with words. And you were always torn down with words. And so you know what that feels like. You know the damaging effects of wrathful words. You know how it hurts. But somehow, somewhere along the way, I don't know where it happened, but somehow we begin to get this idea that if we're pushed to a certain point, that if somebody really says this to us or does this, at some point we earn the right to blast them. Now let's be real. Let's be honest. We're in church. Most of us feel like there's that point where I have a right to blast them, to give it to them, to cut loose on them, to tear them down because, well, that's what they did to me. They deserve it. There's a problem with that if we call ourselves Christian. I'm talking to Christians right now. If you're not a Christian, maybe this is one of those steps to get there. Christians, who are we supposed to be like? Jesus. It's always the right answer in church. Jesus. We're supposed to be like Jesus. At what point did he earn the right to do that to us? At what point did Jesus earn the right to lash out at those who are beating him? At what point did he earn the right to lash out at those who sinned? That's us, by the way. And it was our sin that caused him to go through a beating. It was our sin who caused him to have a crown of thorns. It was our sin that got him nailed to the cross. At what point did he earn the right to lash out at us? Let's be real. God's a patient God. I mean, he's a super patient God. He's an incredible patient God. I don't know about you, but I've long went past my limit for him to lash out at me. But I'm thankful for a patient God. Because see, I claim to be a Christian, I claim to be a follower of Christ, and yet I keep on sinning. I mean, is that not reason enough for him to lash out at me? Yeah, he's a patient God. I'm glad he is. You know, God wrote some cool stuff about this. His words are so important. His word tells us some really neat things. There's a passage. It's not our main passage this morning, but it's a passage I want us to look at, and we're going to kind of keep it in front of us today. It comes from the book of James, James chapter 1, verse 19. It says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and should not get angry easily. An angry person doesn't do what God approves of. Wow. I mean, did you know that was in the Bible? Come on now. Y'all got your biblical eraser. This is one of those we want to take out. It's really in there. And notice how it started. It said, everyone. That means we can't use that excuse, well, I just have a short temper. Everyone? Everyone. I mean, God, who do you mean by everyone? Okay, everyone. Everyone? He said everyone. No excuses there. And I really want us to pay attention to that second sentence. An angry person doesn't do what God approves of. I don't know about you, but when I get pushed to that limit, when I get pushed to the edge, when I'm feeling anger, when I'm feeling some rage, when I'm about to get out of control, when I get out of control, I'm not listening to God. I'm not listening to other people. I'm not even listening to myself. I'm just reacting at the moment. And that's where our words of wrath come out. There's always aftermath. There's always negative results. Because when we're out of control, when we're an angry person, we're not doing what God approved of. God gives us cool stories about giants of the faith, giants of Scripture that we look up to, and we should, because we can learn so much from these people. But he gives us these stories, real-life stories about some sins that these people are struggling with. And so today we're going to look at a guy's life. Now this message may end up being one like you've never heard in church before. It may be a subject you never heard addressed in church before, and I'll tell you why. One of the main reasons why is because it's one of the major sins of pastors and church leaders. And so they don't want to mess with that. Of pastors, one of the greatest struggles they have is abusive language in their home and with their families. And of church leaders, and many of you have been in churches that way where there's not a lot of loving, kind words shared in behind closed doors. And so we don't want to mess with this one. Except God said, you got to mess with this one. You got to look at this one. And he gave us the story of this guy. Y'all probably know his name. We've talked about him before. He's this giant a giant of the faith who just did great things for God. And we start learning about his life, his adult life, in a fit of rage when he lost control and he killed somebody. And then God sent him off. Sent him off to the school of patience, which is never fun. Just, it's never fun. Sent him to the school of patience, and the man becomes really a giant of patience. He becomes a man who's honored for his patience, incredible man of God. And just when he seems like he's got a hold of this thing in his life, just in his older age, just when he seems like he's beat some of these demons, that's when we got to watch out. That's when the words of wrath come right back, and they always have an aftermath. So let's take a look at this guy, tucked away in a little book that's probably nobody's favorite book, the book of Numbers. Okay, maybe if you're an accountant, that's your favorite book. The book of Numbers, chapter 20, is this cool little story starting at verse 1. It said, in the first month, the whole community of Israel came into the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. Since the whole community was without water, they came together to confront Moses and Aaron. The people complained to Moses and Aaron, and they said, if only we had died with the other Israelites died in the Lord's presence. Did you bring the Lord's assembly into the desert just to have us die with all our animals here? Why did you make us leave Egypt and bring us to this terrible place? There's no place to plant the crops. Even the figs and grapes and pomegranates won't grow there. There's no water to drink. That's what's going on, folks. You can't read this like, da, 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 da. Moses and Aaron, they're in the desert. And all these people are whining, fussing, complaining. They just going on and on. Look at some of the words they use. Why didn't we just get to die with the rest of the people? Did you bring us here for us all to die? I love verse 5. Why did you make us leave Egypt? As I read the story, nobody was made to leave Egypt. They chose to go. Nothing grows here. Man alive. All the whining, all the complaining, all the blaming. What they're doing is they're pushing Moses to the edge. They're pushing him right there to the edge. Trying his patience. They're not very thankful for what they've already been given. That's usually a major problem when we're losing control. We're not looking back at all the great things that's happened to us. They've forgotten that God's provided free food for them for a long, long time. They hadn't even had to plant nothing. They've forgotten how God's protected them and guided them through this desert journey. They're not showing any faith in God and not showing any faith in their leaders, and when that happens, it hurts everybody. They're using words of wrath, painful words, words that are hurting, words that are not necessarily true, because they weren't forced to leave. They could have stayed in Egypt. In fact, they wanted to stay in Egypt several times, they said. Words of wrath. They always have an aftermath. So Moses is being pushed to the edge. Let me ask you, when was the last time you found yourself in a situation like Moses and Aaron? Oh, it was your fault even if it wasn't. You know, you've been there? It's your fault even though it wasn't. It starts getting piled on you, you know. You to blame, even though they chose to get in the situation themselves. It's all your fault. Mom, how about it? When's the last time that happened at home? You know, it's Mom's fault. We're out of milk. Mom, why didn't you go to the store? Clothes are dirty. Mom's the only one who knows how to run a washing machine. How about it, Dad? When's the last time it happened to you? Maybe it wasn't at home. Maybe it was at work. The dude up the line, he didn't do his job, but you got hammered. They couldn't catch any shrimp, Todd, and it's your fault. We didn't have no shrimp. And then there's the teens, man. The teens get blamed for everything, don't you guys? Y'all get blamed for, hey, are y'all back there talking? Are y'all distracting people? Y'all get blamed for everything. It's always the teen's fault. What's wrong with this family? It's the teenager's fault. Well, you're fine till y'all came along. Well, whose fault was that? How do you feel in that situation? When you're getting the blame. And maybe you had nothing to do with it. Anger? Frustration? A little rage? Revenge? See, we usually begin to act a little volatile in those situations. So what did Moses and Aaron do? This is pretty interesting what they did. Let's pick the story back up at verse 6. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Immediately they bowed their faces, touching the ground. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, "Take your staff. Then you and your brother Aaron gather the community. Right before their eyes, tell the rock to give up its water. And this way you will give the community water from the rock for them and their animals to drink." Good answer, Moses and Aaron. Good move right there. That was the best move they could make. You know, when the world begins to crash down on us, when the pressure begins to, start cooking us, when we start to get blamed for things, what do we need to do? We go to God. We go to God. We go to God. Teenagers, when the parents are just blaming you for everything, what do? Go to God. Keep your mouth shut. That gets more trouble. Go to God. Mom, when it's all coming down on you and it's your husband's fault, go to God. Husbands, go to God. We go to God. Go to God. This is the key. We can't miss this. Moses and Aaron did the right thing. They immediately went to God. I want you to see how they went to God too. They went to God humbled and in worship. They bowed down. It says when they went to the tent there, they actually went to the place they worshiped. It's like going to church. And they bowed down and they called out to God and they said, "God, we need your help on this one." Now that is what we usually do, right? Remember, you're in church. Let's be honest. Maybe be honest even when you're out of church. What do we usually do? Well, there's usually one of two reactions. When we're being attacked or when the circumstances is chaotic and it's crazy and we can't get a handle on things, one or two things we usually do. One, some people shut down. They just shut down, Bo. I mean, they close down. They become unconnected from the problem around them, and they become unreactive and they just don't do anything. But then there's that other group of people. Y'all know the other group of people? The other group of people who get the mouth going back. The other group of people who engage in the turmoil. The other people who start letting it loose. Who start using them words to get back at them, to put them in their place, to give them a piece of your mind. You better hang on to all the mind you got. Don't give away much of it. See, my mama did that a lot, and that's why she's the way she is today. She gave away a lot of piece of her mind. But that's what we do. A lot of people, we react. We react with harsh words. We come at them because they've pushed us to this point, and they're going to get what they deserve. Words of wrath. There's going to be aftermath. There's going to be consequences. Always. I want you to see the cool thing that happened, though, when Moses and Aaron went to God. I mean, this was the best move. Look what happened. God answered. I mean, is that not so cool? I'm doing a little thing, and those of you who get my text messages, if you follow and you kind of see, I'm going back through from Genesis 1 all the way through. And I'm really focusing just at a story at a time, and I'm just being so amazed how God really shows up in real life. And God really showed up in real life right here with Moses and Aaron. They're like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. These people are going crazy. They're coming at us, and God, what do we do? And God shows up. We need to be careful that we don't miss this. Our God, Ronnie talked about it in the praise and worship time. Our God is so personal that He really is wanting to show up in every part of our life. And when the pressure's on, and when the situation is so chaotic, and when we're getting blamed, or when we're about to get out of control, God is there saying, let me in. Let me in. I got an answer for you here. That's what's going on here. Moses and Aaron, they cry out to God, and God shows up and He says, okay, guys, I got a plan for you. That's what we got to do. In the heat of the moment, that's what we got to do. Maybe it's one of those circumstances where we can't just, go home and get in our prayer place and spend time with God. But even while that situation is in our face, we can zone it out for a minute and say, God, help me here. God, give me the right answer here. I need your help, God. I want to do it your way, God. That's what Moses and Aaron did. Man alive, what a way to go. What a step to make. That's what we got to do. And so many of us fail to do that. I fail to do that. What do we usually do? We usually do what we want to do. We usually do what comes to mind. We usually do what our Facebook friends are saying to do. Danger. Don't do that. We usually do what so-and-so did. We usually do what Mom and Dad used to do. We've got to go to God. See what God said to do. Moses and Aaron did that. They went to God. God gave them an answer. He gave them a very clear answer, very clear directive. It wasn't cloudy. It wasn't, I don't know, maybe. No, God was very clear in His instructions. But there's more to this story. Remember, words of wrath always have an aftermath. I want you to watch this video, see if you've ever found yourself in this situation. Laugh at that because we know it's a movie. But how many times in real life does something like that happen? And it's not funny when it's real. And you look back at that situation, you begin to say, okay, who really blew it there? Who really got out of control? I mean, kids are going to be kids, Bo. I mean, Arnold, he lost it with the kids, but really Arnold left them to their own demise. And leaving them to do their own thing without clear instructions, without doing what he was supposed to do, they did what kids only know to do, and yet in his anger and in his wrath, he screamed out words that hurt. Hurt the kids? And look at him, he ran outside. He's going crazy. Words of wrath Always have an aftermath. So Moses and Aaron, they got all these whining, complaining people. Pressure's on. They did the right thing. They went to God. God gave them a clear answer what to do. Now let's jump back to the story and see what happened. Verse 9. It says, Moses took the staff out of the tent in the Lord's presence as he had been commanded. Then Moses and Aaron assembled the community in front of the rock and said to them, Listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock for you? Moses raised it in his hand and he struck the rock twice. Water came pouring out. And the people and their animals drank. And Moses and Aaron did the right thing to start with. They went to God. They got clear instructions from God on what they were supposed to do. Only problem is they didn't do what God said to do. You see, it's so important that we do go to God and get the right instruction. But when God gives us instructions, it's so important that we do them. It's so important that we follow them in how parents we're to raise children. It's so important, children and teens, in how we're to respect our parents. It's so important, workers, how we work together with those in authority over us. God lays out all those instructions. And once we have the instructions, it's so important that we follow them. But you see, Moses has been pushed to the edge. And now he's lost it. He's lost it. Look at the words he used. You rebels? Now he's gone to name calling. And that always hurts. That hurts. You rebels? And then look what he says. Because he's so out of control now. Moses has lost it so much. Look what he says. He says, look what we're going to have to do for you. We're going to have to bring water out of this rock. Since when can man bring water out of a rock? See, he's so out of control. He's even forgot about God. You see what I'm going to have to do for you? An angry person doesn't do what God approves of. Words of wrath always have aftermath. Oh, it's not that big a deal. I mean, God told him to speak to the rock and he hit the rock. It's not, what's the difference? It's a big deal. It's always a big deal when we decide to disregard how God told us to react and we go out on our own. It's always a big deal when we fail to treat people with kind words and we use harsh words and hurting words and begin to call them names as Moses did. It's always a big deal. In fact, it's such a big deal. We got one more verse in this story about how big a deal it was. Verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, you didn't trust me. You didn't show the Israelites how holy I am. So you will not bring this congregation into the land that I'm giving them. What? Whoa, 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 whoa. This is Moses. This is the great Moses who face to face took down Pharaoh. This is Moses who led the children through the Red Sea and through the wilderness. This is Moses who got the 10 Commandments, and he's been hanging with God. But this Moses, in his fit of rage, has just lost his opportunity to go to the Promised Land. In his one moment of words of wrath and losing control, he lost the Promised Land. See, words of wrath always have aftermath. There's always consequences. There's a pretty big consequences. For what seemed like such a little thing, there's never a little thing when we're out of control. We're using words to hurt people, tearing people down, and disobeying God. Because remember, what did James say? An angry person doesn't do what God approves of. When's the last time you were hurt by words? I mean, somebody tore into you and belittled you, ripped you apart, made you feel about that big. Maybe it's been a lifetime of scars from that. I would challenge you, it's time to forgive. I know that's hard. Okay, I know that's hard. But maybe you grew up in a home like that, or maybe you're in an abusive relationship right now like that. You see, we can't really understand God's forgiveness until we forgive. And remember, we don't have to have an apology to forgive. We forgive between us and God and us. And so as hard as it is, as much as it hurts, we've got to begin a path of forgiveness. Now there's the other side of that, because most of us have been there, and most of us have been on the other side, and that is that we've hurt people with our words. And we've torn into people. And we've belittled people. And it is abusive. And if it's an ongoing problem, then we need help. Well, we need help even if it's a one-time problem. It's called God's Word. But we really need help if it's an ongoing problem. Because an angry person doesn't do what God approves of. And there's always consequences. There's always an aftermath for words of wrath. It hurts. It hurts everybody who hears it. It hurts the person who's doing it. And you know what is true for us as individuals is true for us as a body. It's true for us as a church. We are Open Arms Fellowship, not a building. This building can't say a word. This building can't do an act of kindness. We are Open Arms Fellowship. And so with our words, we can either invite people to Christ or we turn them away from Christ. With our words, we either inspire people or we can devour people. And so we as a body, we as the individuals of Open Arms Fellowship, when we break out of here, and we're going to do that in a little bit, we're open arms. And you know, I've often thought, why aren't we always full? Why aren't we not even having to have 2 or 3 services? Why don't more people come to Open Arms? Well, there's probably some who just don't understand us. They don't understand, you know, why we want to win the world and, you know, or win the low country and impact the whole world. And they don't understand some of the stuff we do with our music, and we let people wear shorts and all that stuff. And they don't understand we don't take up an offering because we just trust people to give and, you know, that kind of stuff. There's some people who just don't understand us. But I have to wonder if there's also some people who've heard us talk and have heard us put down other churches and heard us tear into our family and heard us hurt loved ones. And they say, well, I don't want to be a part of that if that's the way those people act. You see, it's not just the individual, it's the whole body too. Words of wrath. They always have an aftermath. So, where are you on that? Are you the one that's hurting because words have been used against you that way? Maybe the first step is just to come to Jesus this morning and say, Lord, it hurts. Be real with him. He always wants us to be real with him. Just come to him and say, it hurts, but I know I got to forgive him. You know, Jesus has forgiven us. He's willing to forgive us over and over again. And we've used plenty of bad, harsh, and terrible behavior against him. We got to forgive. And maybe that's what you need to do this morning. That's why we'll be down here, to pray with you and help you maybe go through that. Or maybe you got a problem with it. That's your default mode. Everybody in your house is afraid when you snap. Maybe you need to take that to God this morning and say, God, help me with this one. I just seen from God's word how costly it is. Today, let's decide that we're not going to use our words to hurt, but we're going to use our words to inspire and to encourage and to teach and to guide and to help. Because we don't realize how much it's hurting us and how much it can hurt us in the future when we don't. Won't you stand with me? Me and the elders are down here. We're here to pray with you, to pray for you.